cognitive perspective on learning memory. Welcome to our video. You'll hear from 6 presenters from Team 3 of EP402. In this video, we are going to talk about a model of human memory, memory stores, which has sensory memory, working memory, long-term memory, developmental differences in memory stores, and the cognitive neuroscience of memory. Greetings lecturer and everyone, my name is Chun Eng. I'm going to start with the model of human memory. A model in here refers to a representation that we use to help visualize what we can observe directly. And we create a model to help us visualize and understand things more detail. For memory is a learning that continues over time, and it is information that has been stored and in a circumstance it can be recalled. Our memory is very important and is very crucial part of our daily life, since we use it every day to remember facts, solve problems, identify relationship, and make decisions as well. A model of human memory becomes a central component of information processing theory. It is composed of 3 major components that are interconnected with each other. The first one is memory store. It is the store that have sensory memory, working memory, and long-term memory, and all of them respond on holding information. And for the second one is cognitive process. That is the mental process that can be attention, perception, rehearsal, encoding, and retrieval. And the last one is metacognition. It's focused on the cognition mechanism. Well, now we move to another thing. Is about the diagram of model of human memory that is figured by 2 famous American psychologists, Atkinson and Severin. Now let's begin with the sensory memory. In order to remember something, information has to pass through our sense. So when we get stimuli from environment, like we are seeing, hearing, eating, or feeling something, information pass into our sensory memory. So if you pay attention to the information will be filtered and selected to our working memory. For example, imagine you are walking into the temple of Angkor Wat in Siem Reap. We would not remember every moment of walk and every aspect we saw because we don't pay attention to it. But when you see the beautiful Apsara or the wall of temple, you pay attention on it. The information will be passed to your working memory. As we continue our walk, we are thinking about Apsara, we thinking about the beautiful of Apsara, and we rehearse it, maintain it, and repeat the memory of Apsara again and again, and this memory will be moved to another storage. Like finally, the information that we store in our working memory is encoded, then it can be stored in long-term memory. Now if you need to remember something, you need to bring it back from a working memory by retrieval process. For example, like after you left temple, you will likely not continue thinking about Apsara anymore, and it may be lost from your working memory. But when you arrive home and someone asks you about what you have seen and what your experience about your work, you might easily retrieve that memory of Apsara from your long-term memory as well. And this is how memory works in your real life situation. And if we take a bit closer in each main state, you will see that have unique information capacity and retention duration. The first is sensory memory is like a capacity and with very short duration, usually less than a second. And coming next is working memory that has both smaller capacity and short duration. It may last around 15 to 30 seconds. And finally is long-term memory that has both short capacity and very long duration that can be last in our whole life. This model is really important that we can use it to promote our teaching and learning. Like teacher and student need to understand and process our memory information. Teacher need to ensure that students pay attention, create activity, manage the class in order to give interest to the student, and the student pay attention to what teacher teach and what teacher give input to them. Because if they don't pay attention, the information cannot be transferred to another storage. And moreover, teacher need to make sure that students keep practice and rehearse to working memory and answer any question in exam paper. All in all, a model of human memory is very important for lifestyle and education as well. And we can understand it and how the memory work in our mind. So thank you very much for your pay attention, and I will give a floor to our next presenter. Thank you.
Thank you, Bon and A, for your fruitful presentation. Once again, good afternoon, teacher. If you look at math, my name is Emily. I'm from Group C, and today I'm responsible for the next part, which is about memory store. So, in memory store, there are three main stores, such as sensory memory, working memory or short-term memory, and long-term memory. And these are the places that hold information as we organize it in ways that make sense to us and store it for further use. On the other hand, each of the memory stores differ in ways information is processed, how much information can be stored, and for how long. And that is all for memory store. So now I'm moving on to the next slide, which is about sensory memory. So sensory memory is also known as the sensory register. It is used by sense, including what we see, hear, and feel, and so on. And sensory memory is the information stored that briefly hold incoming stimuli from the environment in raw unprocessed form until they can be meaningfully organized. And we acquire the experiences needed for learning and development through our sensory memory. Moreover, the capacity of sensory memory is nearly unlimited, meaning that there are almost no limit on how much sensory information can be filtered in our sensory memory. The duration, though, is very short. The duration of sensory memory changes little depending on which system of sensory memory we are talking about. Sensory memory retains information for about 1 second for visual information and 2 to 4 seconds for auditory information. Furthermore, sensory memory is the starting point for further processing. It holds information until we attach the meaning to it, and then transfer it to working memory, which is the next store. So now let's moving on to the next point, which is about working memory. So to make sense of the experiences, learner construct knowledge. It is the basic principle of cognitive learning theory, and this is where working memory comes into place. So, working memory is the conscious component of our memory system. It's often called a workbench because it's where our thinking occurs and where we try to make sense of our experiences by linking them to what we already know. And we are not aware of the contents of either sensory memory or long-term memory for processing. On the other hand, working memory has three components, such as a central executive, a phonological loop, and a virtual spatial escapade that work together to process information. As for central executive, it is a supervisory system. It's control and direct the flow of information to or from the other components. And it is sort of like a decision maker because it decides what to do with the information, and in doing that, it draws on some different tools. So, what are the tools that central executive can use? Well, one of this tool is referred to as a virtual spatial escapade. It is the short-term storage system for virtual and spatial information, and this is sort of a fancy way of saying a mental image that you sort of create in your mind. So, if I ask you to describe your bedroom to me, you would probably find yourself picturing your bedroom in your mind, and you would tell me about what you are seeing in your mind, and you would also probably describe your bedroom to me based on what you have in your virtual spatial skill page. So as for another tool that you might draw on is the phonological loop. It is a short-term storage component for words and sounds. The information that can be kept in phonological loop indefinitely through maintenance rehearsal, which is the process of repeating information over and over, either out loud or silently, without altering its form. And it is used to maintain information in working memory. For example, you look up a phone number and repeat it over and over again until you get it and then forget it. Another example would be if I ask you how many syllables are there in phonological loop, you are not going to bring up the mental image yet. You will probably mentally loop the sound like more pho- phonological loop, and you will say 6 syllables. So you are probably going to count on your finger while doing this as well. On the other hand, the virtual spatials get paid and the phonological both are independent, so each can perform mental work without taxing the resources of the other, and they self function historically as distributed in short-term memory. And that is all for working memory model. So now let's move on to the next point, which is about the value of the concept that can be used to promote teaching and learning. And I have divided into two parts, which are sensory memory and working memory. So for sensory memory, as you have known, it holds incoming stimuli from the environment until the information can be processed. So to keep a student from losing important information as teacher, we should allow them to attend one message before presenting the second one. For example, for elementary teacher, they should ask one question at a time and get an answer before asking another question. So now let's move on to another point, which is about working memory. So as we have known, it is where learner consciously process information and its capacity is limited. So to avoid overloading learner working memory, we should develop lesson with questioning and avoid extended period of lecturing. For example, for high school teacher, they should walk through the solution to problem by having different students describe each step in the solution. And that is all for my part. And that is part, my teammate will be responsible for it. Thank you.
So good afternoon, lecturers, and hello everyone. My name is Sokupetana. So thanks to Mali for your clear explanation on the previous part. Without further delay, let me continue to the next main part, which focus on limitation of working memory. So let me begin with explaining the key concept first. So what is working memory? So working memory is just like memory storage that we try to hold on and manage the information in order to make sense of it. And another one is making working memory capacity, refer to how much or to what extent that our brain can store the information. Like for adult working memory, it stated that they can hold like 7 items for 10 to 20 seconds, and for children, working memory capacity is even shorter than that. Next word is working memory space. So due to limited capacity of working memory, there is also a limit space for storing the information as well. For example, our brain is just like our smartphone. They also provide a limit space for storing data as well. Like if your smartphone storage is only like 16 gigabytes, so you can only use to that extent. Another related keyword is memories overload. So when we overuse the limited capacity, it will become memory overload. Mean that you cannot store those information anymore. Like for example, let's say you learn a new theory, like we got skill theory of cognitive development. So we try our best to manage and make sense of those information and store in our brain. But if we have no more space for that lesson, you cannot make sense of it. So it will become memory overload, meaning that you cannot make sense and store that lesson that you have learned in our memory anymore because it's too much to handle. And working memory's limited capacity is the most important feature in learning because it's where we make sense of our experience and construct our knowledge. So next point is cognitive load. It's a concept that we can use as an example in limitation of working memory. So it's divided into two. The first one is the number of elements we must attend to. When we learn to do a writing, so for the first time you only write a few sentences, and after that we move to the next level, the complexities of the element. After we have learn only write only a few sentences, 4 to 5 sentences like that, and after that we try to conduct a paragraph or an essay, which means that you have to write a lot of sentences talking about one topic. So it will be more complex than it used to. Next point. Accommodation the limitations of working memory. So as we already know that our working memory has a limited capacity. So how can we deal with it? There are three effective strategies to deal with cognitive load. The first one is developing automaticity, is the ability to perform operationals with little awareness and conscious effect. For example, I am a year 4 student at IFL9. So driving my motorbike from home to school or from school to home is such an automatic action for me because I have done it repeatedly for 4 years already. So unlike the first day that I come to school, I have to memorize when to turn left or when to turn right. And at night I don't have to do so because when I write at that specific point, I will turn left or turn right automatically. Next point. Using distributing process is more likely related to visual aid, and it has two components. The first one is visual information and verbal action. So for example, just like in my presentation right now, so I try to insert the picture so that everyone can easily get the main point and remember those main points. And another example is when you teach action word to your student. So you can tell a word while do the action run. So you have to run like this so that your student can remember the action and the word as well. Next one. Checking. The checking is the process of separate items in order to make it more easier and clearer to remember. For example, so I learned formulas in teaching methodology like difficulty index and discrimination index. So first I have to separate the formula first so that I can easily identify those formula and store it in my memory. So that's all from my part. Thanks for paying attention, and let's give the next floor to the next presenter. Thank you.
Hello everyone, my name is Gunati Rania. I will continue the next part from the previous member. Now let's talk about the long-term memory. Long-term memory is the permanent information that can be stored for a long time period or a lifetime as well. It allows you to remember the important event in your life, such as how you meet your loved ones, the first day in school, or learning how to ride a bike or train a car. Long-term memory contains three kinds of knowledge, which are declarative, procedural, and conditionals. So move on to the next slide. It's about declarative information in the long-term memory. So declarative knowledge is the knowledge of facts, concepts, procedure, and rules. It has ability to tell story from your past, and describe what happened in a certain time in your life consciously. For example, you may have a friend who trying to remember their wedding anniversary, and they ask you for help. This is an example of declarative memory because it requires conscious recollection of facts and events such as dates. And declarative memory divide into two types, which are episodic memory and semantic memory. So next, let's talk more about episodic memory. So it is stored in the personal experience or event in specific of time. For example, when I was 6 years old, a dog bite my leg. So when I see a dog, I start to get traumatized and recall to that event. And another example in learning is that you were so exciting to learn new grammar about like present simple from the last semester. So when you learn about it again, you review it, you start to recall what you have learned with the other teacher. So they are stored in your episodic memory when you have strong emotion or strong reaction to that event. And move on to the next slide is about semantic memory. It is a memory for concept, principle, or general knowledge. For example, you recall when Cambodia under influence of Khmer, which even though you never experienced through that time, you just learning about it. And move on to the next part is declarative knowledge as schema. It is acquiring declarative knowledge involve integrating new information with existing knowledge. It is organized in the form of schema that represent the way information is organized in the long-term memory. For example, your friend is going to study abroad and you said break a leg, but your friend didn't understand the meaning of your word because she never heard the meaning of the word before. So your word is it's not make sense to her. However, it's meaningful to you because you construct the schema. Usually in most of the classroom, not every word you say is going to make sense to your student. Sometimes they understand the opposite meaning of your saying. So schema is different to the person who construct them. So to develop the meaningful schema, let's talk about it in the next slide. Develop meaningful schema is crucial in learning for 3 reasons. So the first reason is our schema represent our understanding of the topic we study, and the more meaningful, interconnected they are, the more thoroughly they understand the topic. And second, research indicates that the number of chunks working memory can hold is limited and the size of the complexity of chunk is not. And the third is the more meaningful schema is the more places exist in which we can connect new information. So the next point is meaningful schema implication for learner and teacher. Learners should always be looking for relationship in the topic we study. Although we need to know the definition concept, simple memorize definition or another review items of information is an effective study strategy. For example, when you learn about history, you need to know the connection from one story to another. Otherwise, we cannot understand the relationship between the story, like the history of Bill Uncle What. Not only one king who built it, but many kings from one generation to another until it finished. And for teacher as well, you should make a effort to have students identify and hold that accountable for understand the connection among the idea we take rather than teaching information is isolation pieces. So a student cannot catch on to what we teach to them. For example, teacher teach student about Khmer Empire, and the next session teacher move on to Khmer Colonial. This way, student could not could make confusions with the lessons. So the next slide is about the next is schema in our daily life. So schema represent our understanding of our personal, social, and academic role. For example, my friend always late for appointment, so I think she will be late again for the next appointment. This shows us how we remember her in my memory, because schema influence how we think about the world. As I usually heard about IFL that it has strict rule and not many students are going to pass the entrance exam. So before I register to take the exam, I ask myself, what should I do after I pass or fail the exam? So and after I pass, am I going to make through during the study there? So schema build a guide our action to organize the information. So that's all of my point, and thank you for your listening, and move on to the next presenter. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Irania, for your presentation earlier. I will take it on from here with the procedural and conditional knowledge in long-term memories and developmental differences in memory stores. So let's kick off with procedural knowledge. Procedural knowledge is a knowledge to perform asked by the parrots. So without further ado, let's continue with what is procedural knowledge. Procedural knowledge is a knowledge on how we get the tasks, problems, and works done or executed. And to support that claims, for example, the things that we get done, mostly the essay, how we perform sports, how we play music, how we fix things, mostly on the daily basis, or works that we use what have stored in ourselves. And procedural knowledge is supported by declarative knowledge. Declarative knowledge is a knowledge that is based on facts and what we have learned. So uh, uh, actually, declarative knowledge take a lot of time to sharpen one skill or one knowledge in order to be able to be good at it or to be able to use it efficiently. And even those declarative knowledge support procedural knowledge, but they are contrast to each other because procedural knowledge is implicit; it cannot be explained. For example, you are able to fix your car or motorbike by yourself, but you cannot explain to other people how you get it done. It is based on instinct or intuition that you do it. But declarative knowledge can be explained because it is mostly what we have learned from other people. We learn by the facts that is how we get that thing done. And it is a process that take time step by step in order to learn, and that is why uh, we can explain declarative knowledge but not procedural knowledge. However, conditional knowledge is where and when people are able to use declarative knowledge. For examples, in one sceneries or in one occasions where you are given two objects that is broken down. The first one is phones, and the second one is washing machines. And then you started by fixing the phones, and then once it is fixed, you cannot use what you have learned or what you have done by fixing the phones to fix the washing machine at all, because they are two different objects. So you have to use different method as well, and that is why conditional knowledge tell people to use declarative knowledge based on the things that is needed to get done. Let's move on to another example, which we will be talking about the procedural and how declarative knowledge supported. So let's talk about music or instruments. Mostly, let's talk about guitars. So people cannot learn to play instrument instantly without any effort of learning and practicing, even those they wish to. They have a lot of things to learn, like scale, chords, rhythm, melody, and timings, and that those are the declarative knowledge that they need to learn. It takes a lot of time, like years to get better at it. And so one day start playing, uh, once they are getting good at it, all the exercise that they have learned will be embedded into their minds, and once they start playing using their feelings, and then other people hear it, uh, the guitarist or the instrument player will not be able to explain it to them, because it takes a lot of techniques and times to master one skills. They can't just explain it to them instantly, like, oh, it is done like this. If a person wants to know how to play guitar, they need to learn the declarative way first, like learning about chords, timing, and rhythms, how it is done. And that is the basics and importances of declarative knowledge that come in handy, and it supports procedural knowledge. And the last point will be focusing on the development differences in memory stores. So people of all age process information in the same way to a certain extent, but the development differences do exist because adults are more productive than children due to the development of capacity and efficiency. Adults tend to process the information more quicker and deeper than children. Let's talk about martial arts. So students mostly does things or do things that they are told to do. Even in combat, they just use all of their strengths, their best strength to combat their opponents instead of using techniques. But adults are different from them because adults have spent a lot of time practicing, experiencing combats with their opponents. What are needed to get the winners by beating their opponents. They mostly don't use the strengths like the children does or do because adults tend to use a lot of experience, because experience makes a lot of difference in the development differences between children and adults. They tend to use a lot of techniques, the same as in study. All of the point here support study a lot, because as a teacher we cannot force our students to do things instantly. Instead they need a lot of time to develop themselves little by little, in order to write an essay. What do they need? Sentence structure, grammar, vocabs. They need to develop a lot of that things in a declarative knowledge sense in order to get good at it. And once they have master all of those things like vocabs and grammar embedded into their minds, uh, once they start writing an essay year after year after developing all of those things, they can do it more faster and more better than when they haven't learned or started to learn anything at all. And that is why procedural knowledge, declarative knowledge, and conditional knowledge is important. For conditional knowledge, students learn how to write essay. Like, there are a lot of type of essay, so they have to decide on what they have learned as declarative knowledge. Like, they are told to describe certain topics, and then they cannot use an analytical process of writing essay to get the describe things essay describe descriptive essay done. And that is why the learning of all of this point is important. And that is all of my part. Thank you very much for listening to me and paying attention this whole time.
Good afternoon, teacher, and hello everyone. My name is Song Tiwi, and I'm responsible for the last part, which is the connective neuroscience of memory. Memory is defined in connective neuroscience as a retention, which is the action of absorbing and preserving things and experiences in mind, and learning that makes recall and recognition possible. Reactivation, which is the process of making something active again, and reconstruction, which is the process of remembering, conceived as involving the recreation of an experience or event that have been only partially stored in memory of internal representation. Its procedure is called a neuron that depends on neurons, which are the nerve cells consisting of cells bodies, dendrites, and axons. So dendrites are the short branch-like structure that collect information and messages from neuron message to axons.
which is the longer branches to transmit messages to other neurons. And the space between the axon of one neuron and the dendrites of another neuron that allows messages to be sent is called synapse. And our ability to form neural connection is depend on our experiences. When we do something frequently, our brain develops a sense of comprehension, adoption, and familiarity with that items. For example, when we first start try to solve a Rubik's Cube, we may not know how to do it, and we may search from internet or watch YouTube videos for tutorials. However, when we practice more and more, we will be able to solve it without any instruction needed. Moreover, exercises such as mental and physical exercises also can help our brains to improve, expand, promote neural activities, which is the connection between neurons, and increase oxygen and nutrient delivery as well. As we have already known, exercise helps us to reduce tension, anxiety, and other negative emotions. Therefore, mental and physical exercises may also assist us to clear our mind, increase cognitive performance, and the more we think or use our brain, the stronger, the quicker, and more efficient it becomes. And the instructor's role are to deliver the high quality learning experience that promote this kind of development. And there are two suggestions for teachers to implement. Firstly, our object is to present students with a broad and diverse range of experiences and quality learning activities that enhance the number of neural connections in our students' brains, resulting in the establishment of permanent interconnection, such as brain growth. As the students get to practice more and more on something, they will develop familiarity with it. For instance, they are interested in growing plants, but they do not know how to do it because they have never had a chance to try it. So after they start to plant or to grow plants, they will develop their knowledge of how to grow plants, how much water or different types of soils the plants need, so on and so forth. And secondly, through the process of retention and transfer, the ability to apply learning acquired in one context to a new context, the teacher's instruction is really essential for the student's educational result. For instance, kids are taught how to calculate plus, minus, multiply, and divide. And as they keep practicing, the kids can calculate numbers even without using the calculators, as they know automatically what, for example, 5 plus 10 multiplied 2 equals 2. So therefore, even after math class, they can also make use of their knowledge about calculating in their daily life as well. However, there are also consequences when the kids happen to remember things incorrectly, because the kids will keep making mistakes and errors, and it is a bit challenging for them to change as well. For example, if the kids mistakenly remember to calculate plus and minus first, meanwhile they should be calculate the multiply or divide first. So even though the teacher keep correcting them and explaining them, they still produce the same mistake since it has already become their habit. Therefore, as they develop their memory, it can be benefit and as well as the cons, because if they remember things correctly, it is good for them. But if they remember things incorrectly, they will keep repeating the mistake again and again, and it is difficult for them to change. So in conclusion, to sum up in this chapter, cognitive perspective on learning are divided into two main points, which are a model of human memory and memory states. For memory state, it also included sensory memory, working memory, long-term memory, developmental differences in the memory states, and lastly, the cognitive neuroscience of memory. This is the end of my presentation. Thank you, teacher and everyone, for paying attention.